I get it. It's been a heck of a week. Man.
Talking about a roller coaster from a party to.
I know, from a party to a turnaround and to arrangements.
Do we know when the bathroom here is going to be fixed?
Yeah, it should be like, I'll ask Mark today, but we're almost, the ones upstairs are,
Because I'm fundamentally
it's like,
lazy and I'm a 6-year-old man, which means I got to walk up and down the stairs a lot.
I like the gymnasium.
yeah,
There's a private
so
one.
Art's the director of facilities. He just got back into town. Art just
Go in the gym. It's
Well,
nice.
Because then I'm leaving town for 4 months. So that'll do me no good. Thanks for the thought.
So they found this. This was missing.
I found it. Do you want to know where I found it? It's hysterical. You ready?
Underneath
Underneath
the
here.
mat.
I know. I looked last week and Michael Harris said no.
One of these should be on each beam and just stay there, right? Shouldn't move around.
It should be. It should,
It should
be
only go here.
Well, it should. It should
Well,
literally
they
be stuck
move
to it.
these around. They move the podiums around terrific.
Yeah.
But they need to leave this here.
Okay, we're gonna start services so we can be done on time. Might just be you and me for the start, but we got this.
What about all the coffee?
I know. Ben says he's gonna bring people in, so. All right. Juan, Juanito.
I thought I was early, actually. But okay.
Oh, you're right on time.
I was going to get a little coffee myself. But,
You can. You can.
But then you're all here by yourself.
No, it's fine. You should get coffee. Okay. Lisa? Okay. Boker Tov, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin shortly as we move from sipping coffee to saying our morning blessings. We're going to begin with a little gratitude, page 99 in the Lev Shalem. Modani lefanecha melechai vekayam shehechazarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha modani lefanecha melechai vekayam shehechazarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. We move to page 103, Morning Blessings, page 65 in the newer Sim Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sakvi v'na lefti min yom v'in layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani b'tzomo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam bokei hachivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abi sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokeif kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mechin mitzadek haver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesa likol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam azer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anotein layav koach. Baruch atah. ותשנינו היום וכל יום לכינו חסד ורחמים עיניך ונחורנו ותגבלנו חסדים טובים. ברוך אתה אדוני גומל חסדים טובים לעמו ישראל. You can be seated. לעולם יהיה אדם ירא שמיים בסתר גלוי. Ashenu matol chelkeinu, na'im gorleinu ma'yafayir shatenu, Ashenu shenachnu ashkimim u'marivim, erev v'boker v'omerim ha'mayim v'chol yom, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem. Kadesh et Shimcha, Makdish Shemecha, v'Kadesh et Shimcha v'Yodamecha, v'Yishuatecha Tarim v'Tagbiach Karneinu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh et Shimcha Baravim. We move to page 109, the rules of interpreting Torah according to Rabbi Yishmael, and then in just a moment we'll move to saying Kaddish. So if somebody would kindly step outside and encourage a few people to come inside and be sure that we have that minyan when we get there, that would be wonderful. Page 109. Rabbi Yishmael Omer Bishlosh Esrei Midot HaTorah Nidreshet Mikav HaKomer Mizer Yehi ratzon milvanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi Beiteinu, shetiten chelkenu b'Toratecha, v'nichiem mitalmidav shel Aaron HaKohen, ohev shalom v'rodef shalom, ohev et habrihot, u'mekarvan laTorah. We turn to Kaddish D'Rabbanan, page 111 in Lev Shalem. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabah v'yamad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shemei rabah mevarach le'olam u'lamei amaya Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'it hadar, v'it aleh, v'it halal, shemei dikudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, damiran b'yoma v'imru amen. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Talmidehon, v'al kol Talmidehon, v'al kol man de'askin be'oraita, di v'atra hadein v'di v'chol atar v'atar. Yehei lachon ulchon shlama rabba, china v'chista v'rachamin, v'chayin arichin umzona ravicha, ufor kana min kadam avuhon di vishmaya v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim tovim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu b'rachamav yaseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Page 112, the psalm for Shabbat. Hayom yom Shabbat kodesh shabo hayu alemim homarim b'veit hamikdash mizmor shir v'yom Shabbat tov levudov v'rahazim. Ojinu fum b'seva d'shini v'rananiu lehagig yishar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlatabo. Turn to page 120. Psalm 30. These were Sher Chanukata Vayit L'Tavid Armi Chadonai Ki to the Tadi Velis Mortir. Eilecha Adonai Ekra Ve'el Adonai Etchanan Eilecha Adonai Ekra Ve'el Adonai Etchanan Shema Adonai Ve'choneini Adonai Ozeli Shema Adonai Ve'choneini Adonai Afach demis bedil makoli, vitachta saki vitazari simcha, lemani samercha kabavalo yidom, Adonai Elohai leolam oteka. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 121. Yit gadal, v'yit kadash, shemei rabbah, v'yamad divra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon, v'yamechon, uv'chayi dechol beit Yisrael, Bagala ubizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Damiran v'yama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Hosei shalom b'mrama, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please rise or remain standing. We're on page 122. Baruch shehamar v'yaholam, Baruch hu, Baruch Hosei Bereshit, Baruch Hamev Hosei, Baruch Gozer V'kayim, Baruch Merchem al Haaretz, Yachid Chli Olamim, Melech Meshubach V'Boradi Ad Shemo HaGadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mehulav Tishbachot. You may be seated. We'll turn forward to the middle of page 125. Adonai Tzevaot Imanu Miskav Lanu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Tzevaot Asher Yadam B'tei Ha'ach Adonai Yoshia HaMelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu Oshia Hitamecha Uvarech Et Nachatecha Hurray, 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 hurray V'nasehim, hurray V'nasehim Ad Ha'olam Oshia Hitamecha Uvarech Et Nachatecha Hurray, 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 hurray V'nasehim, hurray V'nasehim Ad Ha'olam Nafsheinu Mahani b'chasacha v'tachti, Hakeli b'vishotecha, Asher l'Adonai ki gamal alai. Please turn to page 128. Menavi b'shoneto hetumal v'knei. Timotei Drasharav, Vesonei Tzadik Yeshamu, P'dei Adonai Nevesh Avatav, V'lo Yishamu Kol HaKosim Ba. Turn forward to page 131. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Hallelujah, Avdei Adonai, Shomedim B'veit Adonai, V'chatzrot Beit Elohim. Beit Yisrael baruch Adonai, Beit Aharo baruch Adonai, Beit HaLevi baruch Adonai, Yirei Adonai baruch hu et Adonai. Baruch Adonai mitzion. Shochin Yerushalayim. Hallelujah. I invite you to rise. We're on page 132. Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasto. Adonai Elohim ki le'olam chasto. Shebeshifleinu Zachar lanu Ki le'olam chasto Vayifrekeinu Nitzarenu Ki le'olam chasto Noten lechem v'chol basar Ki le'olam chasto Hodu li'el hashamayim Ki le'olam chasto. You may be seated. We turn forward to page 136. Ashrei yoshevi beitecha, od yalelucha selah. Tehillat Adonai Elohim, Vivarech V'asar Shem Kol Shol Olam Vayed, V'anachnu Nivarech Yamei Tavir Olam, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Nafshi et Adonai, Allah Adonai B'chayei Zar, Elohai V'yoti. Adonai shomer et geri, Yatom me'almai yehudei, v'derech reshaim ye'yaveit. Im loch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, l'dor v'dor, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Invite you to turn forward to page 140. Hallelujah. Shir l'Adonai, shir chadash, shir l'tobicha, chasidim yismach. לאסור מלכיכם וזיקים ונכדיהם בכל לב ארצה, לעשות בהם משפט כתוב, הדרכו לכל חסידיו, הללויה. הללו, 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 הללויה. הללו, 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 הללויה. Hallelujah, take our shofar. Hallelujah, nevel v'chinor. Hallelujah, tofu machol. Hallelujah, minim ve'ugav. Hallelujah. Adonai Mision, Shochin Yerushalayim, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Yisrael, Hoseini, Flot, Levato, Baruch Shem Kudol, Yelam, Yilei, Haaretz. Amen, amen. I invite you to rise and turn forward to page 143. Vayash Adonai bayam havoit Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. Vayar Yisrael to Mitzrayim metzal sfatayam. Vayar Yisrael to yad ha'gedola asher asad Adonai Mitzrayim. Vayar ha'amet Adonai vayaminu Adonai uv Moshe avtohu as yasher Moshe v'nei Yisrael. Lishpotari Savai Saladunai Melucha, Vahaya, Adonai the Melchoko Haaretz, Vayum Hapu Adonai Echad, Ushimo Echad. You may be seated, page 145. Nishmat Kochai, Tevarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, Beruha, Kobasar Tever, which remains Zivrecha. Can you tell me? Mi belach mi shvelach mi roch lachel gadol gibor panora elion kunai shamayim varetz elechon shemechacha ve'erchem ve'rechet shem koshach kamor v'davi barchina shiyet Adonai v'choker avayet shem kodsho ayel tatzumot uzecha hagadol b'chod shemecha hagibor lanetzach v'nora v'nore hotecha hamelech hayoshev. In just a moment, we're going to move into the Shacharit service. Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom. What a busy week it's been in the world. Moving from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut is exhausting. Those are two very different emotions, and it's been a lot. And perhaps your week carried a lot more with it than just that. If it did, welcome Shabbat in. Welcome in its peace, its respite. Shacharit is an opportunity for the push and pull of communal prayer, moving into what one of my students described this week as the buzzing bees of the quietude of saying the words quietly in a whisper to ourselves, and then back again into community and back into ourselves, and over again. So feel free to retreat, and then please join again, and then retreat as needed. That's what this Shabbat is all about. I'm so glad you're here. We begin on page 147, Shochinat. Shochinat maram v'kadoshimo V'yishavim titalahu tirei tzadikim titvarach v'yasham chasidim titramam u'kerev kadoshim titkadash u'makalat rivevat amecha b'it Yisrael Shekim chovat kol yitzarim lefanech Adonai Eloheinu v'lo yavoteinu leodot v'halel V'shavayach l'vayir l'ramel l'odil l'varech Lehu Kales, I'll call the erasure of the Tishbekot. David Vadishai Abdecha Meshichecha, please rise. Yishabach Shimcha, Light Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VeHaKadosh, HaShamayim VaHaretz. Berachat ve'odot betavir olam baruchat Adonai el melech gadol v'tishmachot el haodot Adonai niflaot avucher b'shirei zim ramelechel chei ha'olamim. In just a moment, I'll lead us in the Chatzi Kaddish, followed by the Baruch Hu. And after the Baruch Hu on 149, you can be seated. We're going to go through the Shema and its blessings, both before and after. And when we get to that Micha Mocha section, I'll gesture for you to rise at the bottom of 158, where we'll do a Hechi Kedusha, where we start the Amidah together and then continue individually. Again, we're on 148 now. When we turn the page for the Baruch Hu, we'll be still standing, and then you can be seated. And I'll gesture when it's time to rise again. Yitkatav yikata shemei rabba Yamadi rak yirtiv yamlich Vokotei b'chayechon Yamechonu chayidoko beit Yisrael Hagala bizman kariv Yimru amen Yehi shemei rabba Varak V'lamodem haya Yitvarak V'yishavach V'yitbar V'yitrom V'yinasei Yitadar V'yitalevi Yitala Shemei dekudisha Meri Kulei lamin kober katav v'shirata Shishvachata v'nechmata damiram v'hom lavimru amen. Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach le'olam va'ed. Zeh v'shevasei shalom v'rit ha'kol ha'kol yadehu ha'kol yishabehu ha'kol. In Gerkecha Adonai Avinu B'olam Hazeh V'yein Zuletecha Malkeinu V'chayi Olam Haba Efes Filtecha Koleinu Limotam Hashiach V'yidu Melecha Moshinu L'Tchiyat HaMeitim Eladon HaKol HaMasim Baruch Hu Borach V'fikul Neshama Godlo V'tuvo Malei Olam Edat U'Tbuna Sabivimoto Hamid Kodesh, Neitar B'Kavod, Al HaMerkava, Zerutu Mishar, Lifnei Chiso, Chesed V'Rachamim Lifnei Chevodo, Tovi Mehorot, Shevara Eloheinu, Yitzaram V'Dat, V'Vinahu Baskel, Koach V'Vura, Natan B'Hem Liot, Moshe Li V'Keret Tevel, Leim Zivim V'Kim Noga, Naizivan V'Chol HaOlam, Smeichim V'Tzeitam V'Sasim V'Voam, Osim V'Hem HaVetzahum Konam, V'Yer V'Chavod, Notanim L'Ishvol, Zola V'Rinat V'Sefer Malchuto, Kara V'Shemei Shvai Zerachor, Rabbi Hitkin Surat Lebanam, Shevach Notanim Lo, Kol Zivam Arum, Tiferei Tugetula, Seraphim V'Hovanim V'Chayot HaKodesh Leil Asher Shabbat, Mikol HaMasim Bayom HaShvi'i, Yitala V'Yashav L'Kisei Kevodo. Tibarach Moshino Shabach Maseh Yedecha, Yom Yorei Hor She'asin Taifaru Chasela, Tibarach Sonim V'Chem V'Lin. Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim, Kulam Kiburim, V'Kulam Hosim Imam Yeraretzon Konam, V'Kulam Putachim Epiem B'Tushav Torah, V'Shira Huzimram Arachim Shavechim, Umparim Umaritzim Umakdishim Umamlichim, Et Shem Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol, HaGibor V'Hanorah HaKadoshu, וכולם מקבלים עליהם מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה להרטיש לי עוזרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ונימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים מהירה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. יהום פנים וחיות הקודש רעש גדול ננסים למות שרפים לעומתה משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני מכל מוליע ברוך ממות ידינו ברוך אתה שציון תהיו נזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות עבר עבדתנו אדוני אלוהינו חמלה גדולה ויתרה עמדת עלינו אבינו מלכנו בעבור אבותינו שבטחו בך אבינו מלכנו ותלמדם חוקי חיים כן תכוננו תלמדנו אבינו אב הרחמן הרחם רחם עלינו ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע נלמד ולמד לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה והערננו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו באהבה וביראת שמך הגדול והנורא מתקנו נגילה ונשמחה נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך ואבינו שלום בקרב תנהו שמך הגדול סלביהם התלו לכל אחד באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני Adonai Elohim emet v'yatziv l'kol Lidor Pator Kayam, Yishmo Kayam, Bechisa Nachar, Malchutah, Emunatah Lahad Kayam, Hedi Rafim. Emet Shotah, Adonai, Elohim Beiteinu, Malkeinu Melech Avoteinu, Kol Eloheinu Go Eloheinu, Yitzareinu, Zor Yeshuateinu, Perdeinu, Matzilinu, Me'olam Shelecha. Ein Elohim Zulatecha, Ezrat Avoteinu, Atahu Me'olam. Begin with you. Tilo Yom Ruchu Barak Moshe V'Yisrael Lekanu Shira V'Simcha Rava V'Meru Chulam Micham Ha'ucha V'Hilim Adonai Micham Ha'ucha Nedar Makodesh Nora Tehilot Ha'usefele Shira Katasha Shivechu Gehulim Leshimcha Sefataya Yacha Kulam Hotu Imichu Yamiru Adonai Leolam Levaid Tzur Yisrael Hu Avi Ezrat Yisrael Ubtichinu Mecha Yehuda V'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Komel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher V'Astei Avot U'Hevi Goel Livnei B'neihem Liman Shemo V'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Vokeinu Moshia U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Uvokei Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechei Vitim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechakel Chaim Mechesed Mechayim Vitim Berachamim Ravim Somech Nofelim Berofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayim Emunato Lishenei Hafar Michamocha Bakeburot Umidomelach Melech Limit Umechayei Umatniach Yeshua V'niman Atale Achayot Mitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Nikoti Shishim Kabalam Kishim Shemati Shemoto Bishmi Marom Kaketu V'yad V'yecha V'karazeh Sevi Amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz kevodo. Az b'korash gadol, Ativ v'chazak mashmim kol, Minasim l'masrafim, L'matam baruch yomeru. Baruch devor Adonai mimekomo. מלקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כמחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב וימינו לעולם ועת תשכון תקדש ותוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור נצח נצחים בינינו תיראנה מלכותך Mashiach tzikecha. Yimloch Adonai Eloi Zion Lidor Vador Hallelujah Lidor Vador Nagid Godlecha Unitzach Nitzachim Kedushatecha Nakdish Lidor Vador Nagid Godlecha Unitzach Nitzachim Kedushatecha Nakdish V'shiva Adonai El HaKadosh. You haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, please. Take your time. We're on page 167, Kaddish Shalom. Yikadav yikadash v'rabav ya'allah tivrak yirtevim lich malchutei v'chayechonu b'mechon chaydecha b'eit Yisrael v'agalav yizman kariv v'imaru amen yesh v'yirava mefarach v'ya'allah v'lam v'yom haya yivarach v'yishabach v'yibar v'yichamam v'naseh v'yitadar v'yitzaleh v'yitzalash v'yikutsha v'yirichu v'yitlam v'kol berkata v'shirata tishvukata v'nekmata d'miram v'yama v'imaru amen Tehon return to call Israel. Kadam Mahoni Vishma Vimaru Hame. Ishlamara Vin Shamaya. Vichayim Alinu Yoko Israel Vimaru Hame. Wasi Shalom Vimramahu Yase Shalom Alinu. El Ko Israel Vimaru. Amen. Again, Shabbat Shalom and Boker Tov, everybody. We turn to the Torah service on page 168.
Ein kemocha v'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol amin Umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam vaed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki lecha levad batachnu melech elam v'nisa Adon olamim. Vayehi binso Aharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai ve'afutzu oivecha ve'anusu mesanecha mipanecha ki mitzion teitzei Torah ki mitzion teitzei Torah udevar Adonai miYerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato Greek Shemei Demare Alma Rita. Be'ana rachet ve'lishmei kadisha kadisha yakira ana emar tushbechan be'ana rachet ve'lishmei kadisha Kadisha Yakira Ana Emar Tushbechan Yehe Rava Kadamach Jetiv Tachli Be'oraita Betashmi Mishalim Delibi Ve'liba Dechol Amach Yisrael V'tav L'chaim Ve'lishlam. Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadu Adonai iti uneromima Shemo Yachdav. Adonai Eloheinu, v'nishtacharu v'har kosha, yikadosh
First and second. What are you doing?
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Okay, I didn't know that. Go ahead.
Oh, no. What is here? What's going on?
You're reading first and second?
Oh, okay.
First and second.
Oh, I see. I'm only doing 3. Okay, now I
Okay.
understand.
Okay.
I'm reading, I read during the week, that's what I
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Ah, okay. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Nice to see everyone. No shame in using a box, right? It makes me feel good. I feel powerful. That's right, as long as it's not, oh, maybe soapbox is powerful too. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Before we begin the Torah reading this morning, I thought that we would bookend this with a little bit of Torah. We'll still do some Torah learning, but first, before we begin, we're going to start with a little Torah learning from our rabbinic intern at Sheva Lerman. We only get Sheva for a little bit longer before she joins her congregation up in the Bay Area. And so, without further ado, Sheva's going to start us off with a little learning.
Thank you. I will also use the box. So, in his blog about the Temple Beth Balkans trip, Rabbi Kligfeld noted that in Sofia they visited a synagogue for which he said, or they visited the synagogue, and he looked around and he said he saw that which should be more ubiquitous, a mosque, a church, and a synagogue sharing the same essential plot of land in Sofia. Their spires visible in one long line with the Muslim crescent, the Christian cross, and the Jewish Magen David forming a different kind of trinity, and wondering how to contribute to greater interreligious partnership and understanding. I also think a lot about religious partnership and understanding. I just this week presented my thesis at HUC, which was a Jewish gloss on a section of the Quran. As someone who's studied Middle Eastern studies extensively and wants there to be a way for Jews to access that interfaith space and feel comfortable reading that text from a Jewish lens, I undertook this project. And when engaging in interfaith work as a rabbi, one can sometimes receive pushback. Is this really how you should be spending your time, Rabbi? Shouldn't you be focusing on Jewish life and ritual? Or, Rabbi, I come to synagogue because it's my only Jewish communal space. The rest of the world is filled with other religions. Please don't bring them in here too. And I hear that, actually. I hear the need for safety and security and for dedicated Jewish space. I'm very deeply connected to protecting that need. And I've seen the Beth Am clergy serve and protect it too. And yet I've also seen that our synagogues are big and multifaceted. They're big enough to hold that space and to engage with communities beyond it as well. Furthermore, in Parshat Kedoshim, one of the parshiot that we read this week, it says, Lo telech rachil ve'amecha, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, ani Adonai. Lo telech rachil ve'amecha. JPS translates this first phrase as, do not deal basely with members of your people. But the word rachil is connected to doing business. And Rashi says that rachil means those who go through their, telech rachil, are those who go through their neighbors' homes, looking and listening for what might be objectionable that they can take back to the shuk and share. That's why it gets translated as talebearer. Additionally, the pasuk continues, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, do not stand by the blood of your neighbor, which is usually understood to be a bystander for violence, but also brings to my mind the blanching of someone's face when they're embarrassed, the whiteness that we are forbidden to put upon them. And in that read, this pasuk says, don't go looking for the worst in people or in their communities and then be a talebearer shaming them. And that's simple enough when we're talking about friends. But the interfaith version of this is a little bit sneakier because sometimes it feels good. It feels a little bit better to go in and be like, I don't get why they believe this. To spend the whole time in another space looking for what doesn't make sense, or even trying to prove that we're Jewish because Judaism is inherently better. Having spent a lot of time studying Islam, as a Jew, as a very committed Jew, I'm very grateful that I'm a Jew. I love Judaism so much. that had I not been so lucky as to be raised a Jew, I think I would have joined the Jewish community regardless. And the Judaism that I'm so proud of doesn't need to look down on Islam or Christianity or any other religion. It doesn't need to. I certainly wouldn't want anyone else from any other religion coming into my Jewish space and trying to pick apart my tradition. Lo telech rachil be'amecha, ve'lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. So that's one of the impediments that we see when we enter interfaith spaces. One of the impediments that I think Rabbi Kligfeld, when he speaks about seeking interfaith understanding, he's not saying that we have a problem with this, but I worry and I'm afraid. And I want to reach that point of interfaith understanding. And if we stop here, Beiteinu would be enough, but these are also negative. And I do think that the parsha moves us towards something that is positive. So far, we've only spoken about amecha and re'echa, your people and your neighbor, both of which could easily apply to only fellow Jews. But let's jump ahead 2 verses to verse 18. Lo tikom velo titor et bnei amecha ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha ani Adonai. Do not take vengeance and do not hold a grudge against bnei amecha, and love your neighbor as yourself, for I am God. So here in verse 18, instead of amecha or re'echa, we see this new phrase, bnei amecha, the children of your people. And who else is a religious descendant, the children of our people, more than our Muslim and Christian brethren? I'm imagining our Beth Am friends and rabbis a couple of days ago standing on that street corner in Sofia, looking at a mosque, a church, and a synagogue side by side, and wondering, as Rabbi Kligfeld did, how to contribute to greater interreligious partnership and understanding, how to bring that shared space back to Los Angeles. And though we're clearly not on the trip, and though they have moved on to Thessaloniki in Greece, let us consider that same question as we move forward too. How can we find ways to love our neighbors as ourselves, to treat them with respect and honor and love? Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Shargohet, thank you, and we appreciate the way that you lifted up, in particular, just as the sun is spotlighting your row, Jiva, we appreciate you shining a spotlight on that repetitive verse, Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, just as Rabbi Akiva says that is the way that we are holy in this week's verse. You really shine a spotlight on the way we can be more holy as such. And thank you for tying us so closely with the trip that's halfway around the world. I feel closer to my friends and colleagues as such. So we turn to our Torah reading with so much more to think about now. We turn to the beginning of Parshat Kedoshim, the second of our 2 parshas this morning. We're on page 693. To begin the Torah reading, yes, please, yes. I thought you were saying 692, and I was saying, oh, I don't know. Is it page 693? We'll begin with the first Aliyah. Ed. Oh, sorry, yes. That's what I meant. You're right. I just don't have any page numbers here. At the beginning of Achrei Mot. So we're at 16. Oh, I'm just reading it upside down here. A little vertically dyslexic. Thank you. 679. Thank you. Page 679. The beginning of Achrei Mot, the first of our 2 parshas. V'yazor v'yagim yashir l'chol chazim bo v'nomar amein hakol avu godel Eloheinu tenu kavod laTorah Yamad Aryeh Yitzchak Ben Chaim Tzvi L'Aliyah Rishona Baruch Shnatan Torah Le'emo Yisrael B'Kedushato V'tamad B'kim Adonai Le'echem Chayim Kulechem Hayom.
There.
There we go.
Okay, here? Okay, thank you.
All
Baruch Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vayed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Lam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noteinu Torah.
Amen. וידבר אדוני אל משה אחרי מות שני בני אהרון בקרבתם לפני אדוני וימותו. ויאמר אדוני אל משה דבר אל אהרון אחיך ואל יבוא בכל עת אל הקודש מבית הפרוכת אל פני הכיפורת אשר על הארון ולא ימות כי בענן יראה אל הכיפורת על הכיפורת בזאת יבוא אהרון אל הקודש בעפר בן בקר לחטאת ואיל לעולה כתונת בת קודש ילבש ומכנסי בד יהיו על בשרו ומזנבת בד יחגור ובאבנת בד יחגור ומזנבת בד יזנוף בגדי קודש הם ורחץ במים את בשרו ולבישם ומאת עדת בני ישראל ייקח שני שעירי עזים לחטאת ואיל אחד לעולה והקריב
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam tatachenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noteinu Torah.
Amen. Tamad. Hevel bat pluma, l'aliyah hashniah. Second aliyah begins on page 680. We're in chapter 16, verse 6.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vayed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
ויקח והקריב אהרון את פר החטאת אשר לו וכיפר והקריב אהרון את פר החטאת אשר לו וכיפר בעדו ובעד ביתו ולקח את שני השעירים והעמיד אותם לפני אדוני פתח אוהל מועד ונתן אהרון על שני השעירים גורלות גורל אחד לאדוני וגורל אחד לעזאזל והקריב אהרון את השעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל לאדוני ועשהו חטאת והשעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל לעזאזל יעמוד חי לפני אדוני לכפר עליו לשלח אותו לעזאזל המדברה והקריב אהרון את פר החטאת אשר לו וכיפר בעדו ובעד ביתו ושחט את פר החטאת אשר לו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נוטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Ya'amad Yehuda ben Avraham, Dalia Hashlishit.
Got it right. Yep, that's it.
Baruch etah Adonai, Baruch etah Adonai, Hamvara,
Baruch Adonai Avarah, Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvara Lelom Bayet, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech halon, Asher bahu banu mikol ha'amim, Venatan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, Onoten HaTorah.
Amen. V'lakach mu'amakta gachalei esh me'al hamizbeach milifnei Adonai umlo chofnav ketorat samim daka v'hevi mibeit laparochet v'natan et haketoret al ha'esh lifnei Adonai v'chisa anan haketoret et hakaporet asher ahoidut v'lo yamut v'lakach midam hapar v'hiza v'etzba'o al pnei hakaporet kedma v'lifnei hakaporet yazeh sheva pe'amim min hadam v'etzba'o v'shachat et sa'ir achatat asher la'am v'hevi et amo el mibeit laparochet v'asa et amo ka'asher asa l'dam hapar v'hiza oto hakaporet v'lifnei hakaporet v'chiper al hakodesh mitumot b'nei Yisrael u'mipishehem l'chol chatotam v'chein yaseh li'ohel moed hashochen itam b'tok tumatam v'chol adam lo yeh b'ohel moed b'vo'o l'chaper b'kodesh ad seito v'chiper ba'ado uv'ad beito uv'ad kokal Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech halam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hai olam nota beto hainu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yesher koach ya'amod.
Me'er ben Eliezer
Meir
Leib
ben Eliezer Leib.
v'chana.
V'chana b'aliyah hareviyit. We're on page 682. We're at verse 18.
Baruch hu et Adonai ha'mevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai ha'mevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'yatsa el hamizbeach asher lifnei Adonai v'chiper alav v'lakach midam apar u'midam asayir v'natan al karnot hamizbeach saviv v'izalav min adam באצבעו 7 פעמים, ותיארו וקידשו מתומות בני ישראל, וכילה מכפרת הקודש, ואת אוהל מועד ואת המזבח, והקריב את השעיר החי, ושמח אהרון את שתי ידיו על ראש השעיר החי, והתוודה עליו את כל עוונות בני ישראל וכל פשעיהם לכל חטאותם, ונתן אותם על ראש השעיר ושילח ביריש איתי המדברה, ונשא השעיר עליו את כל עוונותם על ארץ גזירה, ושילח את השעיר במדבר, ובא אחרון אל אוהל מועד, ופשט את בגדי הבד, אשר לבש בבוא אל הקודש, והניחם שם, ורחץ את בשרו במים במקום קדוש, ולבש את בגדיו,
ויצא, ועשה תולתו ותולתם, וכיפר בעדו ובר העם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamod.
Yitzchak Leibush,
Yitzchak Leibush.
Ben Avraham Veliba.
Ben Avraham and Liba, Balecha Achamishit. But before we take that, we're going to cover the Torah.
Okay.
Everyone looks so surprised when I call it the Torah this morning. Before we continue with the Torah reading, though, we are going to make a blessing for all those who are in need of healing. We read a list in this community. I encourage you to rise in body or in spirit. If you have a name to add, we'll pause at the end of this list. Feel free to add it as I gaze around the room, and then we'll complete the blessing. Misha B'Rach Abateinu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rechav Aleha Vivarech Virpei Kol HaCholim Et Zahava Yafa Bat Esther Et Rivka Bat Peshet Yosef Ben Achim Mendel Ben Gittel Et Zerah Chana Bat Zivya Et Judah Yisrael Ben Leah Et Mordechai Ben Esther Et Ani Ben Yamin Ben Tov Ben Urit Et Tava Bar Rachel Leah Et Yoshua Ben Shendel Et Meir Ben Miriam Et Chana Bat Klima Et Peter Pavel Et Razel Bat Rachel Et Shifra Bat Malka Et Esther Bat Lipa Et David Ben Malka Et Lior Bat Avigail Et Amita Cheskel Ben Anat Et Cyril Bat Sarah Et Razel Bat Chai Et Sharona Tova Bat Chana Et Michael Ben Yehudit Masha Bat Chana Rachel Et Alexandra Rachel Bat Shoshana Et Moshe Ben Shmuel Moshe Baruch Shmaya Ben Shena Rachel Et Yafa Bat Shendel Et Pamela Bat Yehudit Et Rivka Bat Rachamha Et Chazana Viva Bat Chana Ushlomo Et Yitzchak Ben Berta Et Harav Deborah Masha Batita Razel Et Esther Bat Chana Et Yael Tzipora Bat Yehudit Dina Et Mason Volkman Et Sarah Bat Masha Rochel Yosef Et Dil Chenya Bat Altefrodo Vet Yitzchak Mendel Dodil Chenya Bat Yitzchak Mendel Et Yachana Pesha Racha Bat Pesha Et Yosef Ben Cyril Veit Kol B'shar cholim b'kehila kedosha azot HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem v'achazika b'rapotam v'yishlach lehem hirav refuah shlema min hashamayim v'refuat hanefesh u'refuat haguf Netoch she'ar hacholim v'chazek et yedei ha'osekim b'tzorchechem shabbatim milizok u'refuah krova lavo hashabak alav b'zman kariv v'nomar amen. Wish a speedy and complete recovery to all. And we continue with the fifth aliyah. We are on page 683. We continue with verse 25.
Baruch hu Adonai Amvorach. Baruch Adonai Amvorach L'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. V'chel v'chatat yaktir ha'mizbecha, V'am shaleach et ha'seir l'Azazel, Yechabes begadav, V'rachatz b'saro b'mayim, V'achar chen yavo l'machaneh, V'et parachatat, V'et tzir hachatat, Asher huva et damam, Lechaper b'kodesh, Yotzia mechutz l'machaneh, V'sarfu v'esh, Et orotam v'psaram v'pirusham, V'asoref otam, Yechabes b'gadav, V'rachatz b'saro b'mayim, V'achar chen yavo l'machaneh, V'ayta lachem l'chukat olam, V'chodesh hashvi'i, V'asor lachodesh, תענו את נפשותיכם, כל מלאכה לא תעשו, האזרח והגר הגר בתוככם, כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהרכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yamod. Shlomo ben Mordechai Shoshana, Aliyah Hashishit. The sixth Aliyah is on verse 31, which you can find on page 684.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch ata Adonai. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat, Shabbaton hi lachem, v'initem et nashotechem, chukat olam, v'chiper hakohen, asher yimshach oto, v'asher yimale et yado, lechahen tachar aviv, v'lavash, et bigdei habad, bigdei hakodesh, v'chiper et migdash hakodesh, ואת אוהל מועד, ואת המזבח יכפר, ועל הכהנים, ועל כל המכה יכפר, ואת הזאת לכם, לחוקת עולם, לכפר על בני ישראל, מכל חטאותם, אחת בשנה, ויעש כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Asnavat Elizarimata Valiah Hashvit. The seventh Aliyah begins with the first verse of chapter 17. We're on page 685.
Touch that. Yes, and then kiss that.
Okay. Baruch et Adonai hamevurach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Hold on. Yeah. Amen. Vaydaber Adonai Moshe lemor, daber laharon vel banav vel kol bnei Yisrael ve'amanata alehem. Zeh hadavar asher tzva Adonai lemor. Ish ish mi beit Yisrael asher yishchat shoro chesev oez b'machane o asher yishchat michutz l'machane ve'al petach oel moed lo hevi'o lakriv korban l'Adonai lifnei mishkan Adonai dam yechashev la'ishahu dam shafach v'nichrat האיש ההוא מקרב עמו, למען אשר יביאו בני ישראל את זבחיהם אשר הם זובחים על פני השדה והביאום לאדוני אל פתח אוהל מועד אל הכהן וזבחו זבחי שלמים לאדוני אותם וזרק הכהן את הדם על מזבח אדוני פתח אוהל מועד והקטיר החלב לריח ניחוח לאדוני ולא יזבחו עוד את זבחיהם לאסירים אשר הם זונים אחריהם חוקת עולם תהיה זאת להם לדורותם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה
אמן. יעמוד ראובן בן אברהם ושרה המפטיר. Please rise for Chatzi Kaddish.
Torah and Haftorah on the same day? Ikra v'ikra shmerabah Yamad yivrach rutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayecha u'v'yamecha u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael Fagala u'vizman karit v'imru Yesh merava mevarach le'alam l'mehomaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach Yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yirhadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shemer Kodeshah Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran ve'ama v'meru.
You may be seated. Before Ed takes the Makter Aliyah, I just want to add for a moment a word of Kol HaKavod to Rick, who upon the end of this week will see another class of fifth graders having completed Coming to Torah, each of them, an entire class of fifth grade at Pressman Academy here at Temple Beth Am, having completed each of them Coming to Torah, reading at least a verse, each of them a chunk of verses at the Torah, at his instruction. A year of instruction, learning how to do Kri'ah, which is an art, and it's a sacred art form. Rick, there are lots of people who I hear, these young humans who are in formation, their musical ears are in formation, their hearts are in formation, and a couple years later they tell me that they can still hear your Merchat Tivcha, even if they learn a different Merchat Tivcha by the time of their bar or bat mitzvah for whatever reason, they've still got yours stuck in their ears. And I know there are also those students that you take in at bar and bat mitzvah, but there's something about seeing an entire class of fifth graders come to the Torah that is remarkable, and it's a blessing for this community and especially for Pressman Academy. So kol hakavod to you. It's an amazing accomplishment this week, and it's great to hear you at our Torah as a reminder of just what a great Baal Koreh you are yourself. So thank you for the gift that you give to this community, both yourself and as a teacher. And with that, we read our Makter Aliyah, which is a section of what we just read. We're now going to start from the 5th verse of the 7th chapter. We are on page 686. All right? Yes. 86.
There.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. למען אשר יביאו בני ישראל את זבחיהם אשר הם זוכים על פני השדה והביאום לאדוני אל פתח אוהל מועד אל הכהן וזבחו זבחי שלמים לאדוני אותם וזרק הכהן את הדם על מזבח אדוני פתח אוהל מועד והקטיר החלב לריח ניחוח לאדוני ולא יזבחו עוד את זבחיהם לאסירים אשר הם זונים אחריהם חוקת עולם תהיה זו להם לדורותם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי העולם נוטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Yamad Hamagbiya Yamdu Hagolelim. Please rise for the lifting and wrapping of the Sefer Torah. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael Adonai Moshe. Yisaidi l'machazikim ha'avitolim ha'melushar. Yisaidi l'machazikim ha'avitolim ha'melushar. Dira'atecha tarchinoam b'chol mitiyot ha'shalom. Dira'atecha tarchinoam b'chol mitiyot ha'shalom. Yanai nai 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 nai. Yanai nai 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 nai. Yanai nai 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 nai. Hai nai 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 hai nai nai. In just a moment, as the Torah is seated, you can be seated as well. I want to state for the record on Ed's behalf that his favorite Haftarah for this parsha is not the one he's about to read. Is that correct? His favorite one is the one from Amos, and I gotta say, it's a banger. It's a great one. So you can go back and read that one because that's listed as Haftarah numero uno for this parsha. Okay, that's the first one. But we're going to read Haftarah number 2 that's listed from Yechezkel, from the book of Ezekiel. So please turn to page 710 after the blessings before the Haftarah, which you can find on page 175. Yishar Kochachem, thank you to our Golalim who are leaving the room. We are going to begin the Haftarah just after the blessings before. Again, you can find it on page 710 after the commentary.
710? Okay. Yeah, I know. Just I just want to see the page. Let's see. No. 710. Okay. I have the things. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanima'arim be'emet. Baruch ata Adonai abocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei he'emet v'tzadek. Amen. Vayhi davar Adonai Elai lemor va'ata ben Adam hatishpot et ir ha'adamim v'hoda'ta et kol to'avoteha va'amarta ku amar Adonai Elohim ir shofechet dam bitocha לבוא איתה ועשתה גירולים עליה לטומאה בדמך אשר שפך אשם ובגלולייך אשר עשית תמת ותקריבי ימייך ותבוא עד שונתייך על כן נתתי חרפה לגויים וקלסה לכל הארצות הקרובות והכרוכות ממך יתקלסו בך טמאת השם רבת המהומה. הנה נשאי ישראל איש לזרעו היו בך למען שופכת דם אב ואם הקלו בך לגיר עשו ועושק בתוכך יתום ואלמנה הונו בך קדשי בזית ואת שבתותי חיללת אנשי רחיל היו בך לאמן שופכת דם ואל ההרים אכלו בך זה מה עשו בתוכך ערוות אב גילה בך טמאת הנידה ענו בך ואיש את אשת רעהו עשו תועבה ואיש את כלתו תימה בזימה ואיש את אחותו ואת בת אביו אינה בך שוחד לקחו בך לאמן שופך דם נשך והרבת לקחה ותזות רעייך בעושק ואותי שכחת נאום אדוני אלוהים והנה הכיתי כפי אל ביצועך אשר עשית ועל דמך אשר היו בתוכך העמוד לבך אם תחזקנה ידייך לימים אשר אני עשיתי אשר אני עושה אותך אני אדוני דיברתי ועשיתי והבצעתי אותך בגויים וזירתיך מארצות והטימותי טומאתיך ממך ונחלת בך לעיני גויים וידעת כי אני אדוני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הזיר כל העולמים צדיק בכל הדורות האל הנאמן העומד ועושה המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ונאמנים דבריך ודבר אחד מדבריך אכל לא ישום ריקם כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על זיון כי היא בית חיינו ועל אבות נפש תושיע במהרה וימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו. על כסאו לא ישב זר ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לא ישאלו יחבר נירו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאי ועל יום השבת הזה. שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Yeshua Koach. Beautiful. And I forgot to warn people that this is the alternative Haftarah. So he stopped where he was supposed to stop. It's verses 1 through 16. So excellently read. Thank you for reading Torah and Haftarah for us this morning. We're going to continue back in the smaller of the two red books in Lev Shalem. We're on page 176. We begin at Yakum Por Khan.
Kum porkan min shemaya. Chinach yitzrach hamim. וכל מי שעוסקים בצורכי ציבור ובעניין ארץ ישראל באמונה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלם שכרם, ויסיר מהם לכל מחלם, וירפא לכל גופם, וישלח לכל עוונם, וישלח ברכה והצלחה, בכל מעשה ידיהם, עם כל ישראל.
For the prayers for our country, Israel, and peace. We begin in the English on page 177. We'll read together on 177, all together on the English in the middle of the page. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessings upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials, who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed, so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth. And may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say, Amen. Top of page 178 in the Hebrew, we read together, Avinu Shabashamayim, Sor Yisrael Begoalo, Barechet Beninat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha Be'evrat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shalomecha, Ushlach Orcha Hamidcha L'Rasheha, Sareha Le'yoatzeha, V'takenem Be'etzah Tova Milfanecha, Chazek et Yidei Menine Eretz Koshenu, V'adchilen Eloheinu Yeshua, V'ateret Bitzachon Te'atrein, V'natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'simchat Olam Yosheveha, V'nomar Amen. Ben will lead us responsively on page 178 in a prayer for peace.
May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world.
The nation will not threaten nation, and the human family will not again know war.
For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion.
Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture, I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea, and let us say,
Amen. We can be seated. We're on page 181.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yalucha Sela. Tehillah Adonai Yidaber Pi Yivarech Kol Basar Shem Kocholam V'ad V'anachnu Nivarichya Mi'atav Yad Olam Hallelujah.
We rise as we prepare to return the Torah scroll to the Ark. We're on page 183. Just a moment, the Ark will be opened. Ki lekach tov natati lechem, Torati al tazavu, Eitz chayim hi lemazim l'tohera me'ushay deracheha darchei Noam v'chol mitzvoteha shalom hashirenu Shabbat Shalom again to everyone. It's lovely to see you. Before I forget to say something, next week, I saw that the cafe was very popular this morning. I think that might have been because it started before services started, that's a nice clue for the community. And next week, we're trying something new where we're going to have a teaching for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes during the cafe. So that's taking place next week. There will be Beiteinu. And then there's going to be a little teaching during the Torah service of Beiteinu. So sometime around, we're starting Beiteinu at 9:30 next week since it's a combined service. And then sometime around 10:30 or 10:45, can't remember which it is, it'll be announced in the email. There's a 15-minute teaching. And then at 11 o'clock, there's going to be a half an hour mini Hamalot service as well. So that's next week. If you want to try out the cafe and you didn't get a chance to this week, next week you get good French press coffee and 15 minutes of Torah. The topic all through the month of May, we're going to do it each Saturday for 15 minutes, is something sort of the mayhem of what we do, sort of the mayhem of minhag, what a crazy custom or something a little bit remarkably strange that we do during services. So something about the Siddur that we do that seems like a little off and that you might be questioning, why is it that we actually do X, Y, or Z? And that's what we're going to focus on for the month of May. We're trying it out. Please give us feedback. Start by coming and having some coffee. Okay, with that, when people ask me the question, are you Shomeret Shabbat? Are you Shomer Shabbos? Do you keep Shabbat? I still, to this day, feel it's a fraught question. It's a fraught question because, much like kashrut, much like other matters of observance that have to do with testaments to frumkeit, testaments to how exactly I measure up to the means of orthodoxy with a small o when it comes to the observance of religion, I don't know how observant I must be of each individual law of the Sabbath for the person who's asking me to consider my yes to be true. Yes, I am Shomeret Shabbat. But there are some things in my household that we do with a great deal of knowledge that allow us leniencies that perhaps this person would not consider to be things that someone who would call themselves Shomeret Shabbat would do. It reminds me of a story. I tell this story all the time. It is an apocryphal tale of Rav Soloveitchik and his wife. Honestly, you all have heard me tell it before. I'm going to do it again. Rav Soloveitchik's wife comes home from a trip. Rav Soloveitchik, one of the greats of mainstream orthodoxy. He's sitting in the kitchen. His wife walks in the door. It's late at night, and he is eating ice cream from a meat bowl with a meat spoon. Because he knows he can. Because there's no problem eating dairy in meat vessels with meat spoons if it's all cold and non-spicy food. He knows it's not problematic, technically speaking. And she says, get out of my kitchen. You're chafing my kitchen. And it's a wonderful testament to what it means to be more lenient once you know more. How observant do I have to be Shomer Shabbat? What does it mean to be Shomer Shabbat? I want to answer this question by the end of this learning /shiur/ back and forth. We're going to do a lot of this in English, even though there's some valuable Hebrew. It's why I included all of this. There are two Rambans, two Nachmanides teachings in here, and they're gold mines. I mean, they're just beautiful. So I encourage you to take it with you. I want to start with the Rashi. The verse is the simplest one I could bring you. Kedoshim tihu. The verse isn't here. All you need is this piska, this piece of the verse, to know what we're looking at. You should be holy. It's a command. Look familiar? Kedoshim tihu. You should be holy. And the question that Rashi and so many commentators ask is, What is what? What is being holy? What's being holy? Who defines holy? What's holy? Good idea with the sunglasses. Nice call, Jeremy.
Thanks.
What's holy? I hope that makes it in the podcast. What's holy? What the heck is holy? Okay, so Rashi, who's in the 11th to 13th centuries, this whole school of thought, Rashi says, Hevu prushim min ha'arayotu min ha'avera, shekol makom shetamotze geder erva atamotze kedusha. He says, stay away from all the forbidden stuff. Don't do anything that you say not to do. Perushim, both pei resh shin and pei resh sin mean what? Separate. Like ufros alenu. Sukkah. Spread over us your sukkah of peace, right? Ufros and perush. It means separate. Completely, right? So what does Rashi think it means? To be Kodesh as a person, what is Rashi saying? He reads the verse and he says, you can look deeper into the commentary too and answer. He says, wherever you see it, Motze Geder Erva Ata Motze Kedusha. Wherever you find in the Torah a command to fence yourself in against such relations, you also find a mention of holiness. Therefore, you should keep yourself even a fence away from it. Stay away. So what does Rashi think holiness is? Anyone want to take a stab at a definition per Rashi? Rashi thinks holiness is what? Doing what? Or not doing what? Staying away from certain behaviors. He gives a specific definition of these forbidden relations, forbidden intimate relations that are mentioned here in this Torah. Stay away. Don't engage, he says. Anyone else? Don't do it, he says. Yes, Aaron.
So by staying away from certain things, what he's saying that, well, you can pretty much do whatever you want of the permitted things, and there might not be an issue as long as you're just staying away, right? Like holiness, like a purity. A woman who gives birth needs to stay away from the temple. That's how she gets holiness or purity. It doesn't matter what positive thing she's doing on the side.
So Aaron's saying Rashi is sort of a literalist in this sense. He's reading between the white space there. So written here, Rashi says, listen, this is like the birds in the kashrut, right? There's a list here. These are the things you must not do. Don't do them. If it says geder, keep away from them, stay away from them. Anything else, if it's not mentioned, it's not mentioned. We're not worried about it, perhaps, right? Because perhaps, and perhaps that's what Rashi is saying. That's a very interesting take. And it's very specific. He says, stay away. Okay, we're going to get right to the Ramban because it's so interesting. Oh, Elon, you first, yeah.
The one thing that's a little bit disturbing in what he said is to end from sinful thoughts, because that actually is, I would suggest, not doable, right?
Okay, so he says, and stay away from sinful thoughts. You're forbidden to have sinful thoughts. It's forbidden. Don't think about it. It's forbidden, right? Now, to be fair, Elon, you're right. Not doable, and we wouldn't have a Torah if we didn't have all of these laws to say, what do you do if you do a bad thing, right? So there actually is a large and extensive system, even midoraita, from the Torah that says, when you think about a bad thing, here's what you do, right? So we have a system set up for that. But I'll give it to you. It really is a very not doable thing if it's black and white, right? It might be setting us up for something quite problematic and not doable because human beings think about bad things sometimes. Think about doing things that are not permitted. Oh, I see two hands in the back row. Okay, we'll make it to you, Tyson, but first, yes.
I was think it's interesting he's saying, like, don't do bad things. He's not saying do good things. He's not saying, like, go to services or, like, candles or whatever.
Right. So it's a positive command, Kedoshim to you should be holy. And Rashi says, don't do this, right? How are you holy? Don't do X, Y, and Z. Fascinating. Great comment. Yeah.
And what do you mean by simple thoughts? Because, yeah, as you mentioned, like, yeah, sometimes you can't control sometimes what goes on in the unconscious.
versus it just like a random 5-second thought in my head and is gone the next minute.
Great. So could it mean how fleeting a thought? How tiny? How big does it have to be for this thought to be a problematic issue, right? Stay away from anything, completely away. How many fences do I have to build around not thinking about it? And that's a great way for us to transition into what Nachmanides, what Ramban has to say about Rashi, okay? Because look down to the next commentary, you're gonna look at it, turn the page and go, whoa, Nachmanides had a lot to say, didn't he? We're gonna look at the English mostly, only because there's not enough time, we wouldn't get to Kiddush, okay? But the Hebrew is beautiful. The Hebrew is beautiful. He basically says the following, you can even look up. Do you see the fifth word in the Hebrew? Do you see Hanazir mentioned? Gives you a hint at what we're about to talk about. Okay? So the question here is just how abstinent do I have to be? He says, Kadoshim tihiyu. Okay, Rashi says to us the following. Abstain from blah, 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 blah. This is Rashi's language. Lashon Rashi. You see that? The first 3 lines are just him repeating Rashi. He's commenting on Rashi's comment. But in Torah Kohanim, I've seen it mentioned without any qualification. It just says, Kadoshim tihiyu prushim. Just be self-restraining. No geder. Just be self-restraining, Kadoshim. And similarly, the rabbis taught there, you should sanctify yourselves and Kadoshim tihiyu. And the line there is, I'll read to you in the Hebrew, Veheyitem Kadoshim ki kadosh ani. Kishem sha'ani kadosh kach atem tihiyu kadoshim. Be holy like I am holy. And in my opinion, says Nachmanides, this abstinence does not refer only to restraint from acts of immorality. So first of all, he doesn't limit it to just what's mentioned in this parsha, as the rabbi, meaning Rashi, wrote, as Harav wrote, but it is rather the self-control that's mentioned throughout the Talmud, which confers upon those who practice it in the name of the Pharisees, who called themselves the Perushim, literally, people who practice this self-restraint. And the meaning is as follows. This is the crux of his argument. The Torah has admonished us against immorality and forbidden foods, but permitted sexual intercourse between man and his wife, and the eating of certain meat and wine. If so, a man of desire could consider this to be a permission to be passionately addicted to sexual intercourse with his wife or many wives, and be among wine bibbers, like people who drink lots, and among gluttonous eaters of flesh, and speak freely all profanities, since this prohibition has not been expressly mentioned in the Torah, as Aaron was concerned we might be reading it, right? And thus he'll become a sordid person within the permissible realm of the Torah. So therefore, skipping ahead, going to the 3rd line from the bottom, one should fourth line from the bottom, that we practice moderation even in matters which are permitted, such as in the following: one should minimize sexual intercourse, similar to that which the rabbis have often said, etc., etc. Turn to the next page. He should also sanctify himself to self-restraint by using wine in small amounts, etc., etc. What is Nachmanides' take as opposed to Rashi? What is Nachmanides saying about what Rashi is saying? What's his response to Rashi? What are his 2 big pushbacks?
One of them he's saying be, judicious, moderate, don't use too much of anything.
Okay. As opposed to Nachmanides saying, don't go near the forbidden things. He says, be judicious and moderate. Okay, that's one pushback. Good.
Right, but not zilch.
Great, not zilch. And the other one has to do with what Aaron brought up earlier, which is, don't think what? I'm being a little Socratic. I'm looking for a particular answer.
Permitted things can be done, infinitely.
Right, don't accidentally think that if we didn't mention a prohibition, that's definitely permitted, right? Like, we're gonna invent forbidden things, don't worry, right? Centuries later, we will invent bad impermissible things, right? Don't think that that's not going to be invented, because it will. Vegas is coming, right? So, right? So but to go back to the first point, what Nachmanides wants to teach about, and I could stop the shiur here, but I'm going to take us just a little bit further. Nachmanides wants us to focus on the idea that we are not a religion of asceticism or asceticism, depending on what region you're from. We are not a religion of people who refrain. We are a religion of people who self-restrain. We are not a religion of people who refrain. We are a religion of people who self-restrain. And to be a religion of self-restraint, this is now me, not Nachmanides, to be a religion of self-restraint, as opposed to a religion that requires refraining or asceticism, requires deep study. Because you cannot be in a mode of self-restraint and navigate tricky circumstances and kind of be in the in-between, eat ice cream in a meat bowl, say, right? One cannot do that without enormous knowledge, right? When people first go into the mode, when people become religious once again in their lives, I'll stay away from coded language. When people become religious again, they're born Jewish, but they decide that they're going to become more observant again. Many times, and I say this with a great deal of respect, that starts in a place of deep observance. Because to be restrictive is to allow oneself to work up to the knowledge that it takes to go from refraining entirely to a place of self-restraint. Takes navigation. Let's go to the last few sources. I want to go to the bottom of that third page, the second piece of paper, to the Mesilat Yesharim, which is this piece of Chassidut. It's a piece of Chassidut that brings a piece of Talmud on another line, on a completely different teaching from Parshat Kedoshim. It's talking about this verse in Vayikra about having just weights and measures. And the teaching goes as follows. Amru, Vehin Tzedek, it should be that you have a just heen, a heen that is a heen of justice, or a heen that is right and just. You should surely have that. This idea of having a righteous heen, they're going to reread as having a just hain. What is hain? So. Hain is so, and it can also mean kain. It can also mean a yes. It can also mean a yes. And they're going to reread it as a yes. They say that just as one needs to have a righteous measure, one needs to have a righteous yes. So they say that it's here to teach us, having equal weights and measures, that we should have a righteous yes, that just as our yes should be righteous, our no should be righteous. That means that Abaye said that one shouldn't say one thing with their mouth and another thing with their heart. So as we're going through this process of figuring out who we are as people of self-restraint, that's a difficult place to be. How do you do the thing that you feel deep inside yourself? How do you become the person who observes the way that you feel if you don't yet have the knowledge to match that? What if I want to say that I'm Shomeret Shabbat, but I don't want to observe in the way that I see some people observing completely, but I don't necessarily have the knowledge to practice with the self-restraint that I see other people navigating so expertly? I neither have the knowledge to be so intricately able to say, oh, I'm not going to go to synagogue this morning. I'll pray on my own if I don't know how to pray on my own. But I also don't want to say that I didn't pray this morning. That's hard. So am I Shomeret Shabbat? Do I say yes or do I say no? That's why I place this in the middle, right? Is it a yes or is it a no? That's hard because often we're asked to say yes or no to these questions. So I want to end with the following two please, Aaron, yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of like switching it to prayer, but like the idea of being holy, there still is no like positive thing. So like the idea of even just going out your way to pray does not seem to be covered on either of these opinions. It's all about restraint.
I agree that there seems to be nothing there about the positive participation in religious life, that it still does seem to be entirely a matter of self-restraint. So perhaps a better example in this way would be, I want to be able to exercise a little bit of, I'm out and about and I want to be able to exercise a little bit of creativity when it comes to what I'm going to eat. And so I wind up going to the grocery store and buying myself a can of tuna, and that is not what I would like to have for lunch. I'd like to be able to go and have a salad somewhere, but I'm just not sure because I don't know the rules well enough yet. And so I don't know how to navigate. I don't know what's forbidden well enough to know what to stay away from, and therefore I'm overly careful. I don't know what my yes and my no's are. Yeah.
So just the way you frame the question, I have a little bit of a problem with, which is when somebody asks you, are you Shomer Shabbat? To me, it's not relevant what their definition is. It's relevant what your definition is. So you should only answer that in, do you believe that you're Shomer Shabbat? Does that person believe it's not particularly interesting?
Great. I totally agree, Ilan. My definition of, Ilan says, it's not really relevant what their definition of Shomer Shabbat is. It's relevant what my definition of Shomer Shabbat is, of keeping Shabbat. And that's thank you for this, because that's exactly where we're going to end, is like, what is the definition of that? And part of what's so challenging about Klal Yisrael in the year 2023 is that we don't have a shared definition, or at least an understanding that we don't have a shared definition. That your Shomer Shabbat might not look like my Shomer Shabbat. I happen to love that. I think the heterogeny, the idea that we have a plurality of ways of observing Shabbat, is gorgeous. But other people, when they ask that question, mean one thing. And I'd love to live in a world where people mean more than one thing when they ask that question. So that's what I'm driving at, exactly what you're saying, that I want to live in a world where we're driving at more than one thing when we ask that question. So the Kedushat Levi has something to say about this Shomer Shabbat business, and he's going to get to Nachmanides. Here we are, this is the last text. Here's what the Kedushat Halevi says. I'd have someone else read it, but microphone problems, so here we go. Once we have appreciated this, this in this moment, I'm going to give you the context. I want you to travel in time back to Yaakov and the time when he was watching over his many sons, and Yosef, his son, was having dreams, and he had a favorite son named Yosef. And he favored that son many times over. But this one time that his son shared a dream, he thought to himself, maybe I don't push it and support so much. And he was shamar et hadavar. He kept that thing somehow. This is the verse, and it will be mentioned further down. This is the verse that's being referred to. Once in Genesis, this is mentioned, that Yaakov didn't say a thing about a prediction that was made in one of Joseph's dreams. This is before the pit, before the sail down to Egypt, etc., etc. You with me? That's where we are in the story, and this is what the Kedushat Levi is commenting on. Once we have appreciated this, we will also understand the opinion of Nachmanides, who writes that it is a commandment to mention the Sabbath on each of the days preceding it. This is why, when we recite the daily psalm at the end of our daily morning prayers, we commence with mentioning what day of the week it is by linking it to the Sabbath, i.e., Hayom Yom Rishon Shel Shabbat. Today is the first day of the Sabbath. According to Nachmanides, this is the reason that the Torah writes, Zechor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho. We're going to say that when we do Kiddush shortly. Remember the day of Sabbath to sanctify it, lekodsho. Instead of merely writing, remember the Sabbath to sanctify it. It's remember Hayom. The message is that we are to remember the Shabbat Hayom every day of the week. The word Zechor not being in the imperative mode, but in the infinite mode. By doing so, we indicate how we look forward to keeping the Shabbat at the end of the week. Having looked forward to the Shabbat in such a fashion ensures that when the day arrives, we'll honor it with our heart and will not, God forbid, commit any act which would desecrate its holiness. From all the above, it follows that if Moshe had announced the fact that the manna would not descend on the Shabbat as soon as he had been told about this by God, the people could have prepared themselves for this day until Friday. Perhaps the desecration by some people of Shabbat might well have been avoided.
The sudden announcement shortly before the onset of the Shabbat took everyone by surprise and resulted in some people not treating the Shabbat with the respect due to it. The word lishmor, to guard, in our verse need not to be understood as to observe, but may equally well be understood as to wait, to guard, to restrain, to hold back, as it is understood in this verse in Genesis 37:11, where it describes Yaakov's reaction to Joseph's dream, in which he saw sun and moon bowing down to him. It means that Yaakov awaited further developments before deciding if there was any substance to Joseph's dream. This is also how Rashi understands the word lishmor in our verse, when he writes that Moshe was punished by God not excluding him from the accusation leveled at the community at large. He was the indirect cause of the desecration of the Shabbat by the people because he failed to prepare them for the advent of the Shabbat, etc., etc. I mostly want this teaching for the sake of the read of Lishmor. I think it's gorgeous. Lishmor et HaShabbat is not to guard Shabbat, it's to observe Shabbat through restraint. We are not a people of refraining. We are not Karaites. We don't sit on the floor and do nothing. We're here, and we all did something to get here, and we all did different things to get here today. We are a people of refraining, not restraining from everything. We have a variety of things that we do, and it takes an enormous amount of knowledge. And this crowd, particularly Beiteinu, I know how dedicated you are to learning and then learning more and learning more. And it's a process. It's a lifelong process of learning. You are shomerim at Shabbat. You're guarding it. You're awaiting it. You're holding close to it and holding back and refraining. My blessing to you this Shabbat and many Shabbatot is that you are able to develop a Shabbat of restraint. Not a Shabbat of refraining, a Shabbat in which restraint gives you blessing. A Shabbat in which your preparation, just as it's described in this story about the manna, is that you have so much time next week and the next and the next to prepare for Shabbat, that by the time you get to the following Shabbat, your preparation make it so that you get a taste of Olam Haba. So that when you're there in the Shabbat, you get to restrain from some of the things that you have to normally do on a regular day because you prepared those things for yourself, and you get to say, thank you, Past Hillary, thanks, Past Elon, thanks, Past Bonnie, right? I did those things for myself, and it's right there. And then you get to refrain from those things because you had the time to prepare. I love that this last text acknowledges the reality that we are human beings. Just like you said, Elon, I'm not going to not think in pure thoughts. It's such a great point. We're not going to be able to just jump into Shabbat without preparation. My blessing to all of you is that we never grow tired of learning and changing what our observances are, that we always feel like we can answer with a just yes, and that we feel like we continue to be a people who are blessed to refrain but not to restrain but not refrain from the things that bring us such joy, and that we always feel like there's a little bit more to learn. Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to invite Mark to come forward and lead us in Musaf. We begin on page 184.
יתקדע ויתקדש שם רבה, ויעלמה דברה קירותה, ויעמלי מלכותה, בחייכנו ויומך, ובחיי דרכו בית ישראל, וגלה וגלה, ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. נשמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברא וישתבח וידבר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקדושה בריחו לעלמים כל ברכתה ושירתה
תשבחתה ונחמתה תמירם בימיו.
אמן.
Amen. We'll do the Musaf Amidah and Hechi Kedusha. We begin on page 185. We join together with Mark on page 187 for the Musaf Kedusha. And after that Kedusha and the blessing Ha'el HaKadosh, we return to our own private Amidah beginning on page 185. And that's where we are now.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ve'anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'konei Hakol Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot U'mevi Goel Livnei Bneihem Leman Shema Be'ava Melech Ozer Ufoked Moshia U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Uvoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechai Meitim Atah Rab Le'Hoshia Mechalkel Chaim V'Chesed Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim Somech Novlim V'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Ishenei Afar Michamocha Bagurot Umido Melach Melech Beimit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua Ne'eman Ata L'Chayei Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei Hametim Naritzecha v'nagdishcha Kesotziach Sarei Kodesh Hamakdishim Shiva Kodesh Kakatuv Hayad Nevi'echa V'kara Zevzeviyamar
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech Haaretz
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech Haaretz Kevodo, Kevodo, Malei Olam, Meshartav Shoalim Ze Lazeh, Hayemekom Kevodo, Liomatam Baruch Yomeru.
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo Yifen Berachamim Ve'achon Amam Yachadim Shema Erev Aboker V'chol Yom Tamid Pamayim Be'ava Shema Omrim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu Ve'hu Yashmienu Ve'rachamav Shenit Ve'rachamav Shenit Le'nei kol chai Liot lachem le'Elohim
Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Ani Adonai Elohechem ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור
Yimloch Adonai Le'Zion Le'dor V'adar.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם ראה ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו מבינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Kaddish Shalom.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
וילמד דברי גדולתה וימליך מלכותה בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מביירה, יעלם ולעלמי המיה.
יתפרע וישתבע ויתפרע ותרומה מנשא ויתהדר 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 שבי לקודשה
בריחו.
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן ועלמה ואמרו.
אמן.
תתקבל צולותינו ואותנו דכל ישראל קדם ובונדי ישוע ואמרו.
אמן.
יש במה רבה משמעיה וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו.
אמן.
עושה שלום מרמיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו.
Amen. We can be seated, and we're on page 204.
אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו, מי כאלוהינו, מי כאדוננו, מי כמלכנו, מי כמושיענו. נודע לאלוהינו, נודע לאדוננו, נודע למלכנו, נודע למושיענו. ברוך אלוהינו, ברוך אדוננו, ברוך מלכנו, ברוך מושיענו. אתה הוא אלוהינו, אתה הוא אדוננו, אתה הוא מלכנו, אתה הוא מושיענו. אתה הוא שהגדירו אבותינו, לחי כתורת הסמים. We rise, we're on 205. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום את השלום יוזנו ושלום. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
We continue to extend condolences to Betty Talkner and her family on the loss of her 97-year-old mother, Nomi. Nomi was laid to rest last week. There's one final Shiva Minyan tomorrow, Sunday morning at 8:30 in the morning at the Talkner home. All those who are in the cycle of mourning and loss and reciting Mourner's Kaddish, please turn to page 207 for Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra kirutei v'amlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'amei omaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha v'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You can be seated for a few minutes. Thanks everybody for being here this morning for Beiteinu. Yesher koach to everybody who participated in services this morning. Thank you to Marshall, Ed, and Rick for reading Torah for us this morning, and Yesher koach again to Ed for reading Haftarah for us this morning. Yesher koach also to our rabbinic intern Ben Siegel for leading us in the Torah service, and to Mark Bernstein for leading us in Musaf. I want to thank Natalie Weiss for being our barista this morning at Cafe TBA. This afternoon, really evening, if we're being honest, 6:45, we have Learning with Ben. And what's the theme again?
It's going to be less text study and more talking about the World Zionist Congress in general.
Amazing. So, learning and talking about the World Zionist Congress with Ben Siegel, again, our rabbinic intern, this evening at 6:45, Mincha, Seudah Shlishit, and Mariv. Tomorrow morning, in addition to the 8:30 a.m. minyan at the Tachner home, we need your participation and attendance at our daily minyan. It's at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's at 7:30 a.m. every other morning of the week, with rare exception for holidays and Rosh Chodesh and such. And it's in the evening, this time of the year, at 7 p.m. Minyan is short. We really need adult Jewish individuals to be there so that we can make minyan happen. Please come when you can. It's especially difficult when we have Shiva Minyanim that are going on. A few brief announcements about next week, in case you missed it when I said it earlier. Next Saturday morning, also Beiteinu, but we're going to start at 9:30 since it's, again, a combined service and there's only library minyan opposite it as a full service. We're going to have a mini Hamalot service at 11 a.m. that morning, and we're premiering this 15-minute slot of Torah learning during Cafe TBA. So with that, we will conclude our services on page 211. Mark, will you grace us with a melody for Adon Olam? Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra lidnasa b'chesafo azay melech shemo nikra li'acharei yitlotako v'le'ato yimlok norah ve'hu haya ve'hu hodeh ve'hu yiyeh v'tifara ve'hu echad ve'sheni ve'hamshilo ve'hachira ve'li reishit ve'li tachlit ve'lo ha'oz ve'hamizra ve'hu re'li ve'mayro avi ve'zor ve'li ve'etzara ve'hu nisi u'manosli ve'nat kosi ve'yom ve'kra ve'yato aviruhi ve'tisham ve'yavira ve'iliruhi ve'liyati Adonai li ve'lavi. Please rise for Kiddush. Anybody feeling particularly Kiddushy and wants to lead us? You can have done something else this morning and still want to lead us in Kiddush. Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Al kein berach Adonai Yom HaShabbat v'Kadishehu Savri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Peri HaGafen. I was thirsty, so thank you. I appreciate that. There's more grape juice up here afterwards if people want. Wash my hands real quick. I have no idea where Kiddush is, but it's somewhere outside after I motzi.
Right in the hall out here, maybe? I saw tables and chairs.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu mitzotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi la'elim haneh. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
לכבוד התינוק החדש שיש לנו במשפחה, במשפחת ארץ ישראל.
Should I wash my hands here?
You're welcome to.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I have a new grandson.